And we have a confirmation that you online can hear us.
I think she can
Yeah.
hear.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we are still waiting for one more speaker to come. Hopefully she will make it, but not to keep everybody else waiting for too long. And so we can start, and maybe Elisa, if she managed to find the building and find her way to come here. So good morning, everyone. Distinguished speakers, guests. It's my pleasure to open this side event, Care, Climate, Mobility, and why gender responsive transport is essential for just climate action. This side event is organized by Gender Budget Watchdog Network. My name is 𝗖𝗶𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗏. I am the program coordinator of the network. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us so early today in the morning, for those who are here in the room especially, but also those connecting online. So we gather here in the context of advancing the SDGs, and particularly this side event is reflecting the SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities. And today's discussion invites us to look beyond the infrastructure and the climate change, but also to focus on the social dimension and to focus on people, their reality, their needs and constraints. And this is where the gender responsive budgeting and evidence-based advocacy become critical. And we will hear in the second part of today's event also the findings from the two researchers from the civil society organizations, what are actually the needs of the citizens and how this should be reflected in the policy making. So today's event aims to bridge these dimensions, which is climate, care, and mobility, by bringing together policymakers, civil society, and also stakeholders. And we will explore together how gender responsive transport policies can actually contribute to just climate action, and what are also some practical steps, practical examples that already exist, so that we move forward from commitments to implementation. Because also yesterday we heard it from all the speakers on the panels that we need to speed up the process of actually achieving the SDGs. So before we move to the discussion and the presentation of the findings, I have an honor to introduce our distinguished speakers for the opening remarks, who will set the stage with the perspective from international, national, and policy coordination levels. So first, I would like to ask Kire Ilioski, the Director of Directorate for Multilateral Issues, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of North Macedonia, to give us an opening remarks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today and to contribute to this important discussion on the care, climate, and mobility. I would like to thank the Gender Budget Watchdog Network for bringing forward a topic that sits at the intersection of some of the most pressing challenges of our time. At the core of today's discussion is Sustainable Development Goal 11, which calls for the cities that are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. For my country, the goal is closely linked to our broader commitment to the 2030 agenda and to the principle that guides our development efforts, leaving no one behind. Voluntary national review done in 2020 highlighted that North Macedonia has achieved a high level of alignment, around 83%, between national policies and sustainable development, demonstrating a strong institutional commitment to to sustainable development. At the same time, the review is clear the implementation gaps remain, particularly in addressing inequality and ensuring that development benefits reach all groups equally. Urban development is one of the areas where those challenges are the most visible. Environmental pressures, including air pollution and the rising greenhouse gas emissions, are the key concern for the cities. Transport, energy use, and the urban infrastructure are the central to both environmental sustainability and the quality of life of the people. In the area of transportation, my country, the law of transportation and the road traffic regulates the development of the public transportation system and ensure access to safe transportation. The government is also implementing the National Transport Strategy 2011-2030, aimed at improving transportation infrastructure and the services. The city of Skopje is developed a sustainable urban mobility plan aimed to provide safe and affordable mobility and transportation across the city. Transportation remains the major contributor for emission and air pollution, which increasing reliance in the private vehicle and an efficient uptake of the alternative modes of the transport. At the same time, the transport sector accounts for the significant share of the national emission, reinforcing the urgency of the transition toward more sustainable mobility system. At the city level, the capital of Skopje Green City Action Plan sets out of clear vision for improving public transport, promoting non-motorized mobility, and reducing dependence on the fossil fuels. Those measures, including investment in public transport infrastructure, efforts to increase the share of cycling and the walking in the policy to shift toward cleaner transport system. North Macedonian policy framework already provided a strong foundation for addressing those challenges. The most important, the country has committed under the Paris Agreement, reducing greenhouse gas emission by up to 36% by 2030, and continue to prioritize energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable urban development. Sustainable cities are not only about reducing emissions or improving infrastructure. They are about ensuring that all people can participate fully in economic and the social life. Transport systems are the key part of this equation. They connect people to opportunities, but they can also create barriers if they are not designed inclusively. We are serious about achieving SDG 11 and about advancing just climate action. We must ensure the transport system reflects the realities of those who depend on them most. My country remains committed to this path through strengthening policy, improving implementation, and working in the partnership with all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ilioski. And I'm very grateful that also the whole Macedonian delegation joined our side event, so it really shows a commitment.
Yeah, great support. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker for the opening remarks is Stefania Deak, the Head of Service Sustainable Development Coordination and Implementation Service, Government of Romania, Department for Sustainable Development. So Ms. Deak, if you could tell us a little bit more from the perspective of Romania, and especially with the focus on the SDG 11 in the context of transport.
Thank you, Ivana. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. In my presentation, I approach SDG 11, of course, in relation with SDG 5, gender equality, because it's important. In Romania, we need to support women, generally speaking, but in Romania is not a very difficult situation for the women, because they have the same rights as men, it's not a large difference between their rights. Because Romania has demonstrated a growing commitment to gender equality and peace training in key law and policy documents in line with OECD recommendation on gender equality in public life. In Romania, we have a responsible institution, public institution, the National Agency for Equal Opportunities between Women and Men, with a clear mandate to promote gender equality, gender mainstreaming, and plays a key role in strategic planning on gender equality policy. More and more line ministries in our country are integrating gender equality into their sectoral strategy and action in collaboration with this agency, including Ministry of Transportation, because this is the point which are focusing today. Romania has set up a whole of government gender equality, as I said, and the Romanian law requires the National Institute of Statistics to develop gender indicators in all documents across various fields, as well as collect and publish statistical data disaggregated by gender. However, reported constraints in allocated budget are challenges for effective implementation, potentially limiting the impact on gender equality outcomes. Romania is implementing all the 17 SDG framed at national level. The Romanian Sustainable Development Strategy 2030, adopted 8 years ago by a government decision. The National Coordinator of SDGs implementation is the Department of Sustainable Development, established at the center of government, which is essential for ensuring the policy coherence for sustainable development and the national level. What I want to point to today is the fact the strategy review process is ongoing, and we have organized preliminary consultation with all ministry between February and March 2026. After the consultation with colleagues from the Ministry of Development, Public Work and Administration and Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, resulted some Romanian perspectives in supporting transport adaptation to climate change with benefits for the population, regardless of gender, as I mentioned earlier. One of them is decarbonization of the transport sector through expansion of electrified railways line, modernization of roads in order to increase urban mobility and reduce territorial disparity in non-metropolitan areas, construction of charging stations for electric cars on road networks. An ambitious goal is to reach until 2032 the integration of such a station in all new road infrastructure projects. Construction of forest curtains in the transport infrastructures area for increasing traffic safety, reducing snow removal cost, and strengthening the climate resilience of the infrastructure. Use of green energy to power the lighting system in the area of road junction, engineering works like bridges, overpasses, viaducts, and intersection on the national road network in order to decrease energy consumption from conventional source and reduce carbon dioxide emissions associated with the operation of road infrastructure. Another perspective is reducing the number of road accidents by eliminating black spots And the third one, which I want to mention now, is increasing the connectivity by implementing programs of the metropolitan train at national level, integrating suburban with urban transportation. Related to supporting gender issues, I'd like to end my intervention with another identified further national priorities: increasing women's safety when using public transportation based on gender audit, to ensure the safe urban infrastructure for women. Smart public lighting has already been implemented. Monitoring cameras have been installed in 10 large cities in Romania. Of course, expanded at the national level, regardless of the type of community, remains a challenge, requires the collaboration of central authorities, such as the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Internal Affairs, and of course, local authorities. It's also important to increase women's involvement in development of local infrastructures in their communities in line with environmental protection measures through grants for at least 500 green businesses run by women in disadvantaged region until 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. Aspects regarding progress and vulnerabilities we face related gender, transport, and climate action on the communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deak. I'm very glad that you especially mentioned the safety for women in the transport. That's something that's also in our regional research in all the countries in the Western Balkan, and Moldova seems to be one of the biggest problems that we face. Also, thank you for mentioning this. And I'm very happy that our third speaker for the opening remarks, Elisa Fernandez, the UN Women Deputy Regional Director, also made it to join us in the event.
Yeah.
So I would give you the floor also to shortly.
Yeah.
Set
Thank you.
the
Thank you very much. I burned all the calories of the week, so that is good. Thank you so much, and I really apologize for being late. It was a complete miscalculation from my part. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really very honored to be here in this panel. So first of all, I would like to express my deep gratitude for the partnership with civil society and especially with women's rights organizations. We see every day the dedication, expertise, persistence that you bring to advancing gender equality, often in very challenging and rapidly changing contexts. And your work goes far beyond advocacy. You are shaping knowledge, generating critical evidence, and keeping important conversations alive, both in public and policy spaces. And as UN Women, we're particularly grateful to the role you play ensuring that policies remain grounded in lived realities, keep that focus, and that the voices and experiences of women and girls are not only heard, but acted upon. Your partnership is not only important, but it's also essential to driving meaningful and lasting change, and essential to achieving the SDGs as we discuss in our panel. Now I'd like to reflect on care, on the care economy. So as you know, globally, women perform around 3 times more unpaid care work than men. And in Europe and Central Asia region, these numbers is 3.4 times. This is not just only a matter of inequality, but it's a structural constraint that is shaping women's access to time, to income, to opportunities, and participation in public life. And this is precisely why UN Women has actively decided to focus on transforming the care economy. This is really the focus, and especially for our Europe and Central Asia region. focusing on recognizing, reducing, and redistributing unpaid care work while strengthening the care systems as a core component of inclusive and sustainable development. And this is also directly linked to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 5 calls for the recognition and redistribution of unpaid care work, as you know, and SDG 11 calls for safe, inclusive, and accessible transport systems. And these goals cannot be achieved in isolation. Care and transport are deeply interconnected across the 2030 agenda. At the same time, one of the biggest challenges we face is the lack of adequate data. Care remains undermeasured and its links to mobility are often not captured in policy processes. Without this evidence, inequalities remain hidden and responses remain partial. So this is why UN Women is working to strengthen data systems, including in terms of time use data and gender responsive indicators to ensure that care is visible, measurable, and integrated into policy design. Now, I'd like to reflect on the link between care and transport. Care responsibilities shape how women move through cities and communities, and their mobility is defined not only by a single commute, but by multiple interconnected journeys, taking children to school, accompanying family members to health services, and accessing to markets. Yet the transport systems are rarely designed with these realities in mind. Instead, they are structured around linear commuting patterns that don't reflect women's lived experiences. And as a result, women face increased time poverty, limited access to opportunities, and significant safe concerns in public spaces. And it is particularly challenging for women in rural areas. So care is also increasingly recognized as a closely linked to climate action. Climate change is reshaping care needs and intensifying existing inequalities, with women often bearing a disproportionate burden of both unpaid care work and climate impacts. At the same time, investments in care systems can contribute to more resilient communities, support adaptation, and enable more inclusive and sustainable transitions. Integrating gender-responsive approaches across care, climate, and transport policies is therefore essential to achieve both equality and sustainability objectives. So allow me to reflect on 3 priorities that stand out. The first one is we need to place care at the center of policymaking, recognizing it as essential infrastructure for both economic and social development. Second, we need to design transport systems that respond to the care realities, ensuring safety, accessibility, and flexibility that reflect diverse mobility patterns of women mainly, but society. And third, we need to strengthen integrated approaches across sectors, supporting data partnerships and sustained investments. But ultimately, investing in care and recognizing its links to transport is not only about addressing inequality, it's about building more inclusive economies, more resilient societies, and more sustainable futures for all. In conclusion, I look forward to learning more about your work and recommendations in advancing climate resilient, gender transformative approaches to care and transport, and working in partnership with civil society and women's rights organizations. Thank you very much, and sincere apologies again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fernandez. I think this was a perfect bridge, especially that you mentioned the lack of data and the policies that are based on lived realities. So now in the second part of our discussion, we will move to the data-driven research, and the recommendations also, some of them that you already mentioned are part of our recommendations. And now I would like my colleague 𝗖𝗶𝘃𝗶𝗶 from Eastern Moldova to present the GBWN research and the recommendations.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today I'll speak on behalf of Gender Budget Watchdog Network. We are a network of CSOs in Western Balkans and Moldova. We work on gender equality and gender responsive budgeting. Today I want to share you our original study on transport, care, and climate change. This study looks at one question: how does unpaid care work change how women travel each day? what does that mean to climate and transport policy? I'll keep it this short and stick to the facts. What we did, we ran a survey on how women and men travel differently in 7 countries: Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Moldova, and Serbia. After the survey, we held a discussion with 100 people. We included people from cities and villages that are caregivers, older women, women with disabilities, women from minority groups. And we wanted to hear from many different types of people, not just one group. What we found, the first finding, is that women travel mainly because of caregiving, dropping children out of school, taking elderly family members to the doctor, shopping, and running many small tasks. This is not one trip a day, it's many short trips, one after another, and the researchers are calling this trip chaining. These trips happen often, most happen at certain times and involves many stops. Men, on the other side, tend to travel in a straight line, home to work, work to home. Women's travel is more complicated. It's not by chance, it reflects who does the unpaid care work at home. The second finding is the public transport does not work for these travel habits. Across all 7 countries, bus schedules rarely match school times, yearly work shifts, or doctor appointments time. In many places, there are no early morning buses, no evening buses, or fewer buses during school holidays, which is exactly when caregivers still need to travel. So women who can afford this, to use a private car, women who cannot afford it travel less or stop working. The third finding is rural women have it even harder. In many villages, there's no bus a day or none at all. Women depend on informal help, a neighbor with a car, a male family member, or a taxi when is available. Some areas have no regular transport at all. This means rural women are shut out of work, healthcare, and public life. Women in rural areas said that turned down jobs offers because they had no way to get in the morning. They missed medical appointments. They planned the entire week around one day they could get a ride. The fourth finding is climate change make it even worse. Floods, extreme heat, damage roads, break rules that are already weak. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, women told us about roads that flood after heavy rain. When the only bus route is full, the village is cut off. Women who manage to care at home are hit hardest. This is why this matters for climate policies. Transport is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emission. Countries are expected to include transport plans in the climate commitments, in the NDCs, under the Paris Agreement. But here's the problem. Most of these transport plans focus on reducing private cars and the switch to electric bus in cities. They do not ask who is using which transport, for what reason or why. If a woman uses a private car, not because she wants to, but because public transport does not fit her caregiving schedule, then telling her to take the bus is not a solution. The solution is to fix the bus system. And if you fix the public transport, so actually works for care-related travels, routes that can go to school, health centers, and markets, schedules that cover early morning and evening, services that run during school holidays. When you reduce car use, you cut emissions, and you improve women access to jobs and services at the same time. Our 3 recommendations remain. First, is to include care work analysis and transport planning for NDCs. This means collecting data on how men and women travel differently, not just where, but why, when, and how. Without this data, transport policy is built around a travel that does not reflect most of women's reality. Second recommendation is apply gender responsive budgeting to transport spending. Roads get much more public money than footpath, lighting, local connections, and public transport. This spending gap has a gender side to it. Checking the gender impact before building infrastructure and tracking how money are spent. and how much can help with fix this imbalance. This is also matched what the 𝗏 Gender Action Plan calls for. Climate finance and gender equality should go together. And the third recommendation, use small electric minibuses in rural areas as both a climate tool and transport tool. Electric talk today focus on city buses and private electric cars. For rural transport is still on fossil fuels and fragmented and reliable. Small electric minibuses fit well in villages with fewer passengers. They cut emissions, they lower running costs over time. And if routes are built around the care-related needs, health centers, schools, markets, they directly fix the travel gaps we have. To close, human travel is shaped by care work. Transport system is not built with this mind. The result is inequality and waste, both for gender equality and for climate. The solution exists. We need just is the will to connect them. Care policies, transport policies, and climate policies. Plan it together with data that reflects who is actually using the roads.
Thank you very much, Alexandru. And one more thing I would like to add to this, and it's one of the recommendations, is also institutionalized participation of different kinds of organizations in the transport and climate planning processes. That includes women organizations that work on the climate change, but also representing vulnerable groups. Even we don't like this word, but let's stick with this still. Or the target groups that are not maybe present often in the rooms where the policies are created or where the decisions are made. And therefore, I would like to ask Sylvia Beales, the Regional Civil Society Coordination for the EC region governing body member, representing Gray Panthers, to tell us a little bit more about how age-friendly cities could look like, and if there are also specific measures that could be taken, and maybe also some examples that already exist in the world and we could get inspired from.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be here, to be asked to speak specifically about older women in the gender debate, particularly on budgeting. And thank you very much to all the speakers who have preceded me. And to Ivana for chasing me. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, aging is at the forefront of the reality of this region. We've heard this a lot in the last few days, and in particular, how we ensure the concern of those of us who work on aging, the concern we have is how countries are adapting budgets, the way they work to this reality of population aging. And just to give, and to both in planning and participation, as you said, bringing in the experiences and lived realities of older people, and particularly older women. And I'll explain a bit why the older women in a minute. But I just want to give you a few statistics from countries involved in the study, which we would love to see. The population of Macedonia, the 60 plus, is already over 17%. And the majority of that older population are women. They live longest, and they tend to live where? In rural areas. Romania, it's already 20%. Actually, in July 25, it exceeded children under 14, population of 60 plus. In Serbia, in 2025, it was 22%. And in Moldova, it's already over 25%.
So it would seem like a very important population to bring into this conclusion, these studies about how to work with women and how to ensure that they can get about safely in transport. So let's have a look. I mean, who uses transport? Why do they use it? They use transport, as you have said, Elisa, to get about, to take their grandchildren to school, to go to hospitals, to go to get a piece of paper, a document. They, for the healthcare, they make up the majority of older persons in cities. But the women are more likely to live alone, have lower incomes and pensions, and they're more dependent on public transport. They do not drive or have cars. And the link with climate, let's have a look at that. I mean, the climate impacts of extreme heat, extreme cold, all of which are relevant to this region, degraded air quality, pollution. Older people might contract lung disease and so on as they get older. It makes walking and waiting and hanging about transfers more difficult. And older women's mobility patterns are often shaped by the care responsibilities that they have. As I said, accompanying grandchildren, visiting relatives, visiting older relatives, visiting older people who do not have health workers to visit them, accessing their own health and social services. So that might involve short stops, frequent stops, changing buses, moving about. And we've already heard from the participants already that they're not likely to even be able to get on a bus to do this. So the conclusion really is that this lived reality of very many people, over 25% of the people in the countries of this region, should be absolutely front and central in transport policy, let alone gender policy. And but I think we know this is not the case, right? Because the lived realities and needs and preferences are not often taken into account, apart from your study, which is really great that you've come to this. So I think you wanted me to talk a little bit about the age-friendly process. I mean, there are tools. There's something called the age-friendly city toolkit, which WHO has designed and developed. I asked about this yesterday in the SDG 11 panel. In the first panel, people didn't respond. But in the second panel, a country which has done quite a lot, which is Spain, did respond. And so what are they? I mean, there are some principles here to overcome issues of, we could look at physical barriers if you like. What are they? High steps, long walking distances, no seating, no toilets, inadequate ramps, bad lighting, no priority seating, fear of falls, of crime, being attacked, overwhelming crowds, high fares, all of these things are documented, and we can overcome them if we want. So evidence-based planning really helps. And where do we get the evidence from? We get them from older people, particularly in this case, older women who are doing the bulk of the caring, as you pointed out. So the WHO transport framework, it talks about, there are 5 A's: availability, acceptability, accessibility, adaptability, affordability. If you design with those 5 A's, you get somewhere useful, because you bring in not only age and gender, but you bring in disability. And disability-aware public transportation is very crucial, as we know. And so what does it look like? Well, there are some quite interesting ideas that have come out of different countries. Specialized paratransit, if you like, on demand, phone booking, ride sharing, volunteer groups which offer cars to drive about, and low floor. When you're thinking about bringing in new buses, low floor, like here in Geneva, everything flat, door-to-door assistance, train drivers to help you get on. And there are also big transport schemes, such as in Japan, which has a compact city policy, which concentrates development cities along tram lines so that people are encouraged to live there in the city centre, avoiding sprawl. Avoiding settlements which are very far away from services. I mean, the 20-minute city, I suppose, is but a kind of flat, accessible city. And there are good examples. You know, Milan apparently has won a European Access City Award. I've not been to Milan, so I can't tell you. USA, in New York, there is now a fully accessible bus fleet, and it has, I'm reading this, so it's kneeling buses, priority seating. Seattle has a Ride Now pilot. So there are practical approaches and community-led responses to this. And is your data, how are people using them? What's the effect? Is it helping health outcomes? Because a very important element of the WHO age-friendly city came from concern about the health of older adults. Why? Adults, when they age, they have these responsibilities. So we have to support healthy aging. The more healthy you are, the more able you are to do all this work, which is required of you as an older adult. You know, support your grandchildren and your children to go to work. As an anecdote, in Spain, when the grandparents went on strike for a whole week, the economy stopped. It was a huge shock because nobody could go to work because there wasn't any care facilities for the children apart from the grandparents. So let's remember that. And so what are our key recommendations in terms of aging? The first one, it's probably very similar to what you just said, Alexander. I mean, planners have got to prioritize inclusion and participation in how they do their work. So before you set up your transport system, go and talk to the users. And if you can't find them in the city, ask them in the villages, because they will want a bus, as you have said. And ask who uses the bus. And if it's ladies, ask them what kind of bus they would like. That's one. And transport data, which we heard, I was very surprised that we heard this yesterday from Anders Vickart of the statistics. The transport data is not yet clear. It's a grey area. Why is this? Because we do know about transport. We do know it's not there. We do know what people want. So let's prioritize that data and disaggregate it by gender, age, and disability and income. How, you know, affordability and the 5 A's, as I've said. And the third one, let's take civic engagement seriously, put it at the heart of planning, not as a box tick, but as how we get to the inclusive, safe, sustainable, and our goal 11, which we all want, and inclusion of all women of all ages, which we want and go for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. It was a really great intervention, and I especially love the practical approaches and the statistics you gave us at the beginning, because it gives a real picture. And we want it or not, every one of us will be of old age at some point.
We will.
So
We all want
we
to
need
be
to
older.
plan for the future also. And its impact also us already, because all of us have either parents or grandparents maybe in this category. So thank you very much for this, and I also want to highlight the healthy aging that you told us about, which I think the overall well-being of the society is something that we are all trying to achieve here. So healthy aging is simply one of the priorities. So then moving to the last but not least speaker, Dragana Dardic from the Helsinki Citizens Assembly from Bosnia and Herzegovina. She's joining us online, and Dragana, please, if you could tell us about research that you did in 2023 on the travel habits and needs of male and female drivers in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Just tell me, do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Once again, thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to share with you what we are doing to bring gender perspective into green policies in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And when we started doing this some 5.5 years ago, it was something that civil society organization had simply not discussed or taken into account. Today's situation is quite different. We have eco-feminist platform that brings together organizations and individuals advocating for just and gender green transition. We have a gender and climate coalition led by UN agencies. And we have quite good several research on women and climate changes. But however, gender disaggregated data in this field is still lacking, as well as gender impact assessment of certain policies and laws. At the same time, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are witnessing more and more local uprising and protest where communities rise up to defend their rivers, lands, and forests. And women are often on the forefront of these movements. And what we are doing in this context, we do analyses and research because we need gender disaggregated data for evidence-based advocacy. And one of them was related to travel habits of male and female drivers in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And almost 5,000 people answered to questionnaire, and half of them stated that they were driving car registered on someone else's name, usually their husbands or fathers. In other words, in most cases, the car is officially owned by a man in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this clearly reflects how strong patriarchal patterns still are when it comes to property ownership. We also use differences in how men and women use cars, and our findings confirm that we have already heard from Alexander and Elisa and Sylvia, and that is that women use cars more often for everyday responsibilities, to make purchases and take children where they need to go, which is also related to gender-determined household duties and caring of others. And if they don't drive, most respondents walk, while smaller percentage use bicycles or public transport. Now, we didn't specifically research public transport, but another study in Sarajevo showed something quite concerning. Namely, 75% of women do not feel safe using public transport, and 63% of them reported experiencing sexual or physical violence or pickpocketing on public transport in Sarajevo canton area. It is already mentioned, but I would like to highlight again women in rural areas who are often forgotten when talking about transport policies. For many of them, public transport is the only way to reach basic services. But in some villages in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it no longer exists. So women who don't drive are completely dependent on someone else to take them to town. I will also mention one of our most recent research from November last year, looked at energy efficiency measures from a gender perspective. Even though significant EU funding was available, 20 million euros were allocated for energy efficiency in households and small businesses. These measures were not designed in a gender-sensitive way. Namely, one of the criteria for granting this financial support was property ownership, and that greatly limited women from applying for these measures since property is mostly owned by men. And in addition to research, we also work on connecting feminists and environmental activists and on raising awareness that the green transition must be both gender and socially just and inclusive. We simply advocate for natural resources to be treated as public goods, not as quick source of a profit. Finally, through reports to EU and UN bodies, we highlight challenges and obstacles that women environmental defenders and activists face, and these obstacles include slap lawsuits, smear campaigns and stigmatization, exclusion from decision-making. Many decisions regarding geological exploration, awarding the concessions, constructions of small hydropower plant are made without public participation or consultations. Also, these obstacles and challenges include limited access to information of public importance, as well as adoption of restriction laws. To conclude, gender disaggregated data are of course important, but it is equally important to create an enabling environment in which activists, especially women environmental activists, can freely operate and work to protect the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dragana. Are there any questions from the audience, maybe to the speakers?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is 𝗶𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶 and I am representing INEED.
Can you speak up a bit?
Sure. My name is 𝗶𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶, I said, and I'm representing INEED. It's an international movement of youth with disabilities organization. And it's been really laudable and such an engaging conversation. And thanks to the panel for what was really exciting and engaging statements, examples that were shared. I really enjoyed listening to this. I just had one quick note, or say like a question, and I think this was pointed out in the last speakers around the question, of course, people with disabilities. And this really ties quite neatly as well to the aging community. And because, of course, one thing that is also central to what is on the table is the question of disability. I just wanted to point that really gender responsive transport and disability inclusive transport are not really separate agendas. In my opinion, they are the same agenda. And because, for example, a woman with a disability face compounding barriers and inaccessible stops on safe routes, unfavorable fares, because when we plan transport systems that work for the most works for the most excluded, we create systems that work for everyone. You know, and I feel like when we're talking about intersectionality, we shouldn't just mention this as a buzzword. It's essentially an engineering specification. I live in Germany, and Nuremberg was also one of the countries, I think it was the second in 2025 that won the most accessible city. And it's a city that has, you know, ramps in almost 85% of its routes. And we need to have such kind of models where women and also people with disabilities are in the room and are also, you know, involved in the policy process. And it was also mentioned here, when we are right at the procurement stages, we're in the planning stages, we need to make sure that people with disabilities, women with disabilities are involved right in the planning stages, such that the result we have is not one that is excluding a large chunk of people in society, but also includes everybody involved. That was just a note I thought to think of. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you very much for voicing this out. It's a very important thing. Thank you again. Any other questions? Stefania, you want to?
Yes, just a short question for you.
Okay,
If
thank
you
you.
allowed me. I am interested of the data sources you used for this assessment you presented us.
Which the ones, the data sources on the numbers?
Yes, or which is the source of data to make this assessment?
Okay, well, the United Nations has a population division,
Yes.
and so it monitors numbers basically by age
Okay.
in all countries, and the statistical division here holds those numbers. So it's absolutely possible to calculate in every single country. Yes, every single country. The age cohorts in each place. Right. It may not be possible without further research to calculate, for example, in Macedonia, the population of over 65s that live in rural areas as opposed to urban. It may not be possible because that will be to do with the country's statistical office. And those of us who work on aging recommend that that is done too, because it's very important to know who lives where and what age they are in order to do exactly what you're saying, plan properly. And disability can be visible, but it can also be invisible. And it can be, if you have a disability to do with a chronic condition, it might prevent you from going outside much, being able to use transport. It may prevent you from going out unaccompanied, which can happen at any age, but it often happens in older ages. And older people don't necessarily like to classify themselves as disabled because they don't look like it, right? And we still, I'm just going to say this because I believe it's so important to say, we are, all of us, a little bit ageist. We don't want to admit that we are aging. And if we say we are older, it might become a stigma. And this is very difficult, really, for people to come out and say, yes, I'm an older person, and this is what I would like for my public policy person to listen to. And for disability, I completely agree with you. If we have design, which I would call universal, there's something called universal design, and a universally designed bench, for example, in a park, is a bit higher than normal, because people who have mobility issues can sit on it, and it's not difficult to get up. But we know what these are. There's a university in England, Newcastle, which has a great department doing this, probably in many places in Europe. But if we could incorporate principles of universal design into our technical planning and talk to people about how they use them, it would be very good. Can I say one last thing? Sorry, I got me on going. But what we were shown, grey area, transport, no data. This is our opportunity to get the data in, right? So next year, it won't be a grey zone. It will be making progress, because we have had surveys. We've had user surveys in all the countries which are investing in transport. And you will do it a lot better than the countries which already have transport systems, which they think are fine, but actually they're not particularly, including in my country, in case. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. This was something that I want to also ask everybody for the closing, to give maybe one recommendation, something that we could do from tomorrow to improve today, maybe today.
Tomorrow is too late.
Yes, to improve the transport in the cities, accessibility, affordability, whatever you choose. So maybe Mr. Ilioski, would you like to start?
Yeah, why not? Really.
What would be one recommendation that you, from your position, in your official position, or as a citizen, what would you like to see?
I fully agree with what you said. The feeling to say that we are somehow, to say that we are all, it's immediately giving us some question that we are facing with some challenges, but we are not ready. We need working closely with all the environment, and to little bit to be any reality to be accepted. First of all, from our side, and after from people which we are every day connected. And how we said will be a little bit too late. We'll start working for tomorrow.
Yeah.
We need just after the meeting. And that is the message of the meeting.
Yeah.
We need to just to clarify that we need to start to work. And today is a little bit late from yesterday. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, I want to point something related by patriarchal pattern, which our colleague from Bosnia mentioned. And I want to point in Romania, we are focused on gender perspective at the central public authorities. I can give you a small example. The Ministry of Internal Affairs, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, and Ministry of Education, together with our agency, as I mentioned earlier, act together to decrease domestic violence, encouraging the culture of gender equality both in family life and in all educational, economics, and societal activities, including at the level of the companies, public administration, and political life. We are focused very much on education because it's civilized transport means education of people, from kids to elder people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dragana, maybe would you like to give your statement as a closing?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned, but yeah, it's really important that all transport and urban planning policies take into account not only gender perspective, but also needs of many other categories that are somehow excluded from the society and decision-making processes, such as elderly people, such as displaced people, refugees, and many other categories. I don't know, some of the measures could go in direction of establishment of affirmative measures when it comes to I don't know, energy efficiency measures, transport policies, and so on.
Thank you very much, Dragana.
Sorry, just one word. Elisa mentioned Spain and protests of grandparents there. Actually, when we tried to influence urban plan of Banja Luka city, we used Barcelona as good example. They measure called urbanism with gender perspective, which we translated from Catalan language and which actually launched Barcelona among 10 most gender sensitive cities in Europe. So maybe we can look at Barcelona example to get some ideas how to do certain things.
Yeah.
Connect region to region.
Yeah.
This is something that because
That's
it's a
really-
little bit divided.
Exactly.
Barcelona is our favorite example, actually.
Very similar.
All of us, because of the public procurement actually process.
Yes.
Maria, would you like to add something as well?
No, I think that Barcelona used the public procurement and the power of money, of gender budgeting, actually, to integrate gender. And I think that's a very unique approach. And it's fully aligned with the EU social procurement expectations and requirements. And definitely, it's not enough just to have missions and commitments set in policies if you don't allocate money for it through the public procurement process and the budgets. It's impossible to achieve those goals. So that's my closing remark from this side. Thank you very much for all speakers. It means a lot for your contribution today.
Thank you. Alexander, would you like to?
Yes, I also want to highlight something. One point from our transport research is that we are not asking for new set of rules. The rules exist. We just must follow them to start implementing. How you said, we must start working on this. Also, I also want to say that no country can truly develop if half of its population is left behind.
Thank you very much. Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this side event, and have a great day. And we start the day working on
Very
change.
early, actually. Very good message.
And maybe next year, bring the regions together
Yeah.
to see what you've done on this
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah, this is.
That would be great. I'd like
And
to
we
thank you.
enjoy because it's unique that we discuss between the speakers, which is unusually also
Yeah.
we are delivering speeches. We exchange our point of view from all the speakers.
Great.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, excellent.
The